AC. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Cracker Barrel. I'm Susan Kipke with the Governmental Chamber Affairs Committee, and I will serve as moderator today. These sessions are intended to provide information to the public. Any opinions expressed here today are not that of the Mitchell Chamber of Commerce. Today we will hear from District 20 state legislators, Representative Tona Rosem, Representative Lance Carson, and Senator Josh Klum. Before we start, we would like to thank the City of Mitchell for the use of their facilities and enabling us to broadcast live over their YouTube channel, as well as record this session for later viewing. We are also broadcasting via Facebook Live on the Mitchell Chamber of Commerce account. This session is scheduled for 1 hour, so I'll start by describing the format. Each legislator will have 2 minutes to give a brief overview of the session or talk about a particular item they see of interest. We will then move to questions from the audience. Audience, please keep your questions brief and to the point. We only have an hour and want to get to as many questions from the audience as possible. When asking a question, please go to the podium or the microphones at the desk and speak clearly into the microphone, stating your name and the question. Legislators will be given ample time to answer each question, but please be mindful of the others. We will alternate which legislator starts with each answer so that everyone gets a chance to be first, last, or middle. We will end the session with a 2-minute closing comment from each legislator. We ask that you be respectful of one another and that audience members limit side conversations. And please turn off your cell phones. We will start with opening comments from Representative Carson.
Well, I'd like to thank the city and the chamber for allowing us to do this. This is quite informal. I think that one of the nice things about it is we get the opportunity to hear what is on the people of District 20's mind. And you know, the session has been kind of somewhat slow up to this point, but this past week in the House alone, there was 238 bills dropped and almost 200 over in the Senate. So things will be picking up really quick.
Thank you. Representative Rosem.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for coming. As Representative Carson said, it's been kind of a slow start, but I think this past week a lot of bills have dropped. We've had a lot of what I'll call just peripheral stuff that really I think we waste too much time on. So we'll see some of the serious issues coming forward. Non-meandered waters was covered yesterday, at least on the House side. So that bill, and even though it doesn't impact us here as much, it's mostly the upper Northeast, there's certainly a lot of opinions about it, and there's a big line in the sand typically between some landowners and some sportsmen. So that will move forward. Most of those people in the Northeast, which is really the ones I rely on to get information, agree that what we have needs to work, but there may need to be some tweaks to that. So I think you'll probably see that as time goes along. So I think Tuesday, Wednesday may be our last day to drop the bill. So I'm thinking it's the 30th, is it? So we're at a point now where we're going to get pretty serious on what's coming up, and we're much better staying ahead of time this year. I think both chambers are taking more bills and not putting them off to the side for the next day. which is good because I think there's 600 estimated bills. And I think we had 400 last year. So that's a lot of bills. So if you have things that you see out there, you got to let us know, because there's no way to track 600 bills until it gets through committee and sometimes over to your own side. So stay in touch.
Thank you. Senator Klum?
Well, thanks everyone for being here today. I appreciate the really good turnout. As my colleague said, that there are a lot of bills this year. I just looked it up. We have 200, as of yesterday, 236 House bills have been introduced and 173. It looks like it's on. But there's 173 Senate bills that have been introduced. But overall, I think the session has been pretty mellow as things go. I kind of like that. There haven't been a whole lot of hot button issues. Things come and go. The water issue that Representative Rosen talked about is probably the biggest issue. And on the Senate side, we've already passed, which is basically the extension of what we did in the summer special session. But then some of the other senators have expressed some dislike of that proposal, and so we've delayed it. The majority leader wanted to delay the final action on that bill on the floor until crossover day. We compromised and said we'll delay it 10 days from Monday, I think it was. So we'll hear it again. Well, it'll come up on the floor, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see other proposals coming down the committee process that we'll have to take a look at. As far as my bill, I had one bill this year that dealt with adoption. I was pretty darn proud of it. It's a really simple bill, but it impacted a family here in the community a lot, and so I was pleased to carry that bill. As far as that, I keep my eyes open. If we're always talking money in some form or fashion, because that's really what we primarily do, is deal with money, and keep listening for if we can find money here or there for basically the service providers. They're on my number one top priority list. I had a senator come up to me the other day and with a bill, he asked if I would sign and said, well, the road tax that we raised a couple of years ago was making too much money for the roads, and we want to designate some of that for the bridge fund. And I'm like, well, it'd be sure nice if we could designate some of it for stuff like that, but it's designated for those purposes. But so that's always on my mind when I see a bill that spends money, like, well, is this good? Can we take some of it for this? But I'm sure Representative Carson has a much better grasp for the money. I don't sit in that committee every day. So, but overall, it's been a good session so far, but well, sure, there's things on your mind that we're anxious to hear about. So, thank you.
Okay, we will now open the floor for questions. Can you speak into one of the mics, please? Either one of those or this one, please. Yes, please.
I'm Steve Brinkman from Mitchell. Senator Klum and Representative Rosen, you have a bill in for House Bill 1134. It has something to do with alcohol sale in municipal auditoriums and convention halls. My understanding is that's in communities of 35,000 or more. I was wondering what it's not. What is your intent on that bill? That's my bill. Yeah, that's.
Well, let me tell you where I started. Yeah, I'll give you a little history. Prior to February 16th, 2016, in statute, it said that communities in excess of 35,000 could have a municipal liquor license to sell alcohol in the convention center. In 2016, we took out the 35,000, we added in sporting events. That was specifically to help Huron, who could not keep a bar or restaurant person leasing their convention center, and they had conventions coming up. So we did an emergency clause, took that 35,000 out, added in sporting, just so they could cover their incoming conventions. Well, when that happened, we have other communities, Mitchell included, who have gotten the liquor license for the city. And so instead of using private business to run those, which you have the trained staff, which in my mind is important. So that allowed our city, as well as I think a couple of other cities, to use that license, to get a license and use it. I don't have to tell you that that's quite the consternation in Mitchell when the city's in competition. So what I said was, okay, I'll go back to put it back the way it is, because Huron's now covered. They closed their airport. The people who ran the airport actually had a pretty good following, so they're now running the convention center. So my thought was it's not needed there. Well, what's actually happened in here is there's a bill to try to keep a airport liquor license separate so that if they ever do get planes back, which we know how that goes, that they have it available. So they're still using the license that the municipality has at their convention center. Our city is using one at the Corn Palace. So I don't know if those people would be grandfathered in. It's a question I need to ask, but I'm interested in your input because as Stephanie and I have talked, I absolutely do not think government under any circumstances should be competing with private business, if at all possible. And I get it in Sioux Falls because those venues are so big that you wouldn't, an individual owner wouldn't be able to go in and have the trained people to serve alcohol. So that's where it is. It's due in committee on Wednesday. I'll have to figure out between now and then exactly what I'm going to do with it.
So trying to follow most of that. But so basically you're using a city liquor, there'll be a city liquor license rather than an individual license coming in to serve in the corner.
That's what's been the case since February 16th of 2016.
Okay.
And all because Huron needed the emergency help. So they did it. Mitchell jumped on board at that point and did the same thing. So
are you trying to?
I'm trying to put it back to 35,000 so it would be Rapid City and Sioux Falls.
Okay, that's.
What's going to, like I say, I don't know if that grandfather's in Mitchell and grandfather's in Huron at the convention center. So that's one thing I'm going to have to find out. But it really bothers me when we have government in competition with private
That was
business.
our concern.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
I thought it might be.
I have one other question. I don't mean to take up time.
That's okay.
There's a
That's why
bill
we're
there's a bill that's going to be coming.
Excuse me, will you let
I'm
either
sorry.
Senator Clem or Representative Rosen?
Okay.
Okay.
If she pretty much
Yeah, I knew she was a sponsor of the bill.
asked
You
me
were
to
on it.
sponsor it on the Senate side.
Lance, you got anything to put in on it? Okay.
Sorry.
There's going to be a bill dropped that I'm aware of that on Port Yankton. They want to alleviate the signatures to get on the ballot, and they want the legislature to put them on the ballot rather than go out and get the signatures. I've been in the video lottery industry ever since this started, 25, 26 years. We have asked for lots of different things, and we've gotten a few, but very few things because of expansion of gambling. Everybody's been against expansion of gambling. We've gotten a couple things with the new slot machines and that sort of stuff. We pay a 50% tax, which amounts to over $100 million a year. Deadwood, I think, pays 8%. I'm not sure what this casino in Yankton would come out to be, what their tax basis would be on that. But I would hope that the legislature could see our point and not let them just automatically go on to a ballot, but go through the process like everyone else did, get the signatures, and we could foresee that this is going to be a big deal down there and lots of money thrown at it. I know some individuals that would be principals involved in it, and they're prepared to throw lots of money into putting a casino down in Yankton. And just wanted to ask your opinions on that and where you would be. Like I said, we'd like to see them get the signatures rather than just be allowed to go straight on the ballot.
Okay. I did follow up on this and had some discussions. First off, it's they call it Yankton Forward, which is a nonprofit group. This is what I've been told. All of the money will go into a fund which will go statewide to communities for economic development. That's the plan. Back to whether it goes on the ballot, our Constitution allows two ways to get things on the ballot, either the signatures or having the legislature approve it. We can't change that. There will be several things this year which will be on the ballot if it's approved by the legislature. So that's really not anything. If it passes the legislature, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm a little skeptical on this nonprofit where all of the funds are going to go throughout the state of South Dakota for economic development. I really haven't been able to follow through on that anymore. I do know it would be all table games, no video lottery. I said maybe we need it for Lake Mitchell. And if this gets on the ballot and passes, it will open the door for more casinos. Their theory is it doesn't impact Deadwood because it's so far away. It doesn't impact video lottery. Well, it impacts everything because of the money that's wherever you're going to spend it. So that's where it is at this point. It's on the House side. Diana Miller is the one that was talking. That's where I got all my information. That's what I know.
What's your stance on it?
What's my stance on it? Well, if it passes and goes on the ballot, it passes and goes on the ballot. I haven't signed the bill. And my inclination is not to sign it because there's just too many unanswered questions. I think there's some corners I don't quite, as I say, I struggle with this being a nonprofit where all the money is going to go throughout the state. Well, not all, if you've got investors, not all the money is going to the community. So there's too many unanswered questions for me to support it either way, whether it goes on via signature or via constitution.
Have they come out with what they want to pay in taxes or what the tax base?
No, and I did not ask that. Thank you for I appreciate the questions because I called Backlund just to get some input so I had questions asked that made sense. Lance?
I've been privileged to go to Yankton, and they've talked to us about it on several occasions. Skipping over a step. The reason we have the Constitution, the way things are done, is so we get things done properly. Skipping over a step and just putting it on the ballot is something that I probably, as I see it now, I probably would not support.
And I would probably echo those statements. I did not sign on to it when I was approached to. Same questions Representative Rosem has, and I probably would not be supportive of it if it does get that far.
Thanks for letting me speak to you, and I'm very optimistic on who we have in here. You guys have done a great job so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Phil Spanos, and I'll try to make it brief. For the past several weeks, National Public Radio has been has had stories that the Justice Department in Washington has stated that those with developmental disabilities have the highest rates of being sexually abused. And it hits home with me because I have a son an adult son that has autism and is living in a group home here in Mitchell. And in this report, they just basically said that usually juries don't believe the victims, and that it's not reported and stuff. Would you enact legislation to protect the least of these people? I'm not just thinking of my own son, but I'm also thinking of other people like him across the state. And my second question is that who do you want, Patriots or Eagles in the Super Bowl?
Go ahead, Representative Carson.
Sir, we had this discussion with the Attorney General's office this past week. The Attorney General was in and presented his program to appropriations. In the governor's budget, he had to cut. He wants to cut one lawyer and one investigating person for abuse in rest homes and what do you call it, centers, given case care centers. When visiting with the Attorney General, he said the two people, I can't quote you the numbers that they had taken care of, the number of complaints, then they found him guilty. But the Attorney General said that he will take that money out of the training fund to make sure that he keeps these in place. So we have just started with the investigation on those type of things, and I am very confident that it'll be put into the Attorney General's fund going down the road. As far as the football situation, you know, if the Packers aren't playing, it really doesn't make any difference.
And if Drew Brees isn't playing, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I'm just looked some stuff up here. There's lots of laws on the books that deal with sexual abuse and the disabled. So there's stuff on the books that do it now. I think the bigger thing we need to work on is making sure the group homes that your son are in get to stay open because they're in danger of closing. And if they close, where are those people going to go? I'm afraid they're going to end up in state care, and that's going to be way more expensive there. So that's really where my priority is. And I think having good people there all the time that the people in those homes know and trust is important in a lot of those cases, especially in the reporting instances.
And,
I don't care once the Vikings lost.
knowing that there's somebody watching them, you'll probably see a reduction in that abuse.
And I will say, I concur with Senator Klum. We have statute covering abuse. What we have to do is get those centers properly covered, which we're not. Our pace is horrible. We need to be at the state level. And there's a bill that will go in next week that hopefully will take the extra, due to federal policy, extra Medicaid funds that are coming into the state because of things that are being covered with Indian Health Services that will be able to effectively fund places like that. So that's really where our emphasis needs to be. If we can have all the laws you want, but if we don't enforce them and we don't have the money there to do it, it doesn't do us any good.
Next question, please.
As long as I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk about the Manning Water situation. The senator mentioned that they got a bill that's going to come out within the next 10 days and pass it over to the House. The House worked on a bill yesterday. You're going to see this. You're going to see a tremendous amount of this bill passing back and forth. What you see now is not what that final bill is going to look like. We've taken our we've written our bill so that intentionally, so that bill will not get through the Senate without sending it back to us, and the Senators wrote their bill, so it will not get through the House. So we'll probably pass that bill back and forth 3 to 4 times before, and it'll probably wind up in a conference committee. So if you're getting excited about the water bill and the sportsman's side of it and the landowner's side, be patient. You'll see something different than what we got.
The irony in this bill is one of the noisiest, and the one who apparently has a total rework, is a guy who lives in Rapid City. This is not a West River problem. It's barely a southeast South Dakota problem. It's up in the northeast that the problem exists. So I'm not sure what his burr in the saddle is, but it's going to become the political football, basically, is what Senator or Representative.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I served with that gentleman from Rapid City, and as you may know, I struggle with egos. I really do there, and I think that's where a lot of this is being driven from. And part of it, I think he does want to solve a problem. He's talked extensively, and I know he's got something in his back pocket that will have to be dropped in this next week, and so everyone will start to be able to look at it. But I think what we have in place now, while not perfect, is working. And I think a lot of landowners that could be doing, I shouldn't even say that. There's a lot of landowners who already have done negotiations with game fish and parks to open up their lakes. The lakes that are closed, from what I understand, there's one, Reed's Lake, which is a trophy lake up in that part of the country. The gentleman who owns the land all around the whole lake was in the middle of harvest. A sportsman from Minnesota came over and was incredibly rude to him. And he said, I don't have time for this crap, and he shut it down. And now he's reached out to Game Fish and Parks and said, okay, we need to talk about opening this up again. The landowners are very willing, I feel, to bring this in as long as they're treated with respect and people ask for permission. I think we'll see better deals being worked with Game Fish and Parks if we had some certainty in this law. A lot of landowners are hesitant to sign a contract with game fish parks when we're playing football with the law. You know, who's gonna make a long-term contract on something that could change next week? So I don't blame them for that fact. I think if we were to take the sunset clause off and say this is the law, well, we'd see some stuff moving. But there's, like was mentioned, there's not the political will right now to take that off in some people's mind. So the House did take theirs off. So this House's version doesn't even have a sunset clause, which would repeal the whole law. The Senate version is just an extension of that till 2021. If the sunset,
what the House did is just remove the sunset clause, period, to let that law work. The new secretary has done a great job. He's gone out, he's talking to both sides, and this is the first time apparently that's happened. So by removing the sunset, now farmers or landowners know what they can do down the road. As it was going to expire like now, which then your hands are kind of tied. Well, what am I going to do? Because I don't know what's going to happen. So on the House side, we've removed the sunset just to let it go. That allows us to go in and tweak as well to make it a better bill.
But it will probably be the last bill passed before the general budget bill, would be my guess.
I will again ask for any questions from the audience.
Jessica Pickett, House Bill 1230 is the texting and driving bill. I know this was spearheaded by Valley a few years ago. And in talking to my 8-year-old son, I'm a proud mother. I explained this bill to him and how they are removing this as a secondary violation, how it will now become primary. And his response is, Mom, it's illegal. Why can't they do something about it? I'd like to know your stance on the texting and driving.
I know what it is. Because there were so many people in the legislature that diametrically opposed having the bill, period, because it's personal responsibility. Same thing with seatbelts. If you'll remember that, the only reason we have a seatbelt law is because of federal funds, highway funds that we wouldn't get. So the way to get it through was to make it a secondary offense, since if you're not using your blinker or whatever. The bill that's on the floor, and I signed it, I don't remember who brought it around, is to make both, I think Jim Bolin, to make both of those primary offenses. Who is it? Holly? Okay. So that's based. Sometimes you have to bend and do the things you don't want to do to get a bill through, and that's what happened with the secondary offense. And well, the other thing you're going to see is Jim Reaper, who is dressed up like the Grim Reaper, and he's got a seatbelt and he's got white hands, and allegedly we're going to see that in the Super Bowl. But to say use your seatbelt, 80% of the deaths in South Dakota are because they didn't have seatbelts on. I don't know what kind of statistics people need to buckle up, but that's pretty darned obvious right there, unless you have a death wish. So if any of you out there don't use seatbelts, shame on you.
I'll just comment briefly on it. This is the first time I've looked at it. When you brought it to my attention, we look at our Senate bills first, and when the House bills get over, we'll look at them. Funny. It's distracted driving. There's a lot of things people do when they drive that they shouldn't do. Texting is one of them. Eating a hamburger, putting makeup on, curling their hair. You hear all sorts of crazy stories about people that do things. I think distracted driving, all-encompassing, should be what we hear. Specific things, it's fine, but I think we need to have a bigger, broader picture of this. Will I support this bill? I don't know. We'll see if it gets over there. You can. But you can't. We'll get into. Do you want to see us go?
Representative Carson, do you have anything to say on the matter?
I can't pass it up. Back in the day, Winston Cigarettes, Marlboros, all these cigarette companies ran commercials on television. Then the federal government stepped in and said, well, guys, you can run a commercial, but for every commercial you run, for every 2 commercials you run, you have to run one saying that smoking is bad. And so they did. What time do you suppose of the day they ran those commercials? They ran them on cartoon time, on Saturdays. These kids don't smoke. we'll catch them down the road. If you go back and look at statistics between the people that are between 47 and 56 is the smallest smoking age that we have in the United States. They were the ones that were exposed to the do not smoke. So if we work hard at it, about the seat belts and about the texting, we can have the next generation coming up with not disobeying the law.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So there's going to be a bill that's brought by the Medical Association and the Cancer Organization. I did write about it in my column, and it's to move the age of purchasing cigarettes to age 21. So I'm going to say at this point there's a line in the sand. You either love it or you hate it from what I'm seeing. But when you look at the statistics, the typical kid the age that most often purchases cigarettes for kids is an 18 to 20-year-old. If you can keep a kid from not smoking until 21, the statistics are really strong that they'll never smoke. One of the other statistics talked about the fact that your brain's still developing and you run the risk of having other addictive issues as well as brain development. So there's a whole bunch of statistics you'll see. I thought it was interesting because the statistics, once again, were pretty compelling, but it'll be an argument. So, and there's also a bill in that same vein to lower the ability to buy alcohol to 18 from 21 if you're in the military. Yeah. I don't know if that's a Senate bill. I'm not sure.
I'm Dan Buchelman. I've mentioned this to you, several of you before, but I'm interested in any bills that might be currently pending or thoughts you have in regards to the individual health insurance market in South Dakota, the control by the networks that those health insurance companies control, the near monopoly status of those few companies, especially when you look at a community like Mitchell where the only hospital is a network hospital. It's caused a lot of people that I know to have to travel sometimes long distances for treatment, and had access to specialists become a big problem. Any thoughts you have in that area, I'd appreciate.
I haven't seen any bills dealing with that specifically, but there's a lot of bills out there. So
I haven't seen anything. The problem we got going on right now is that federal policy is changing. And so I don't know that anything we would do at the state level, I don't know if there's anything we can do at the state level, because I really think it's going to come from the federal level. I would hope from what we're seeing that we may get to a point where South Dakota could have a block grant and administer our own Medicaid, and that all of the stuff with insurance would be better. It's going to take the IHS thing to get straightened out, really, I think, before we have much going on. And the whole monopoly thing, I mean, what do we have? Sanford, Avera, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you're lucky enough to have Blue Cross.
Blue Cross doesn't sell to individuals anymore, so it's Sanford and Avera. And yeah, just from.
So I have to keep working forever?
Pretty much.
Really, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. They will sell to groups, so
yeah.
They have that option. But yeah, if you keep it in mind, some states have enacted laws that just basically disbanded network facilities. So you can go to any provider you want to go, and there's not a pre-negotiated rate. Right. It doesn't force people to travel long distances because they can go to their hospital in their town. Now that may have some effect on pricing of insurance, but a lot of that appears to be a shell game, because what actually happens is they're treating one person, whether they're not treating a group of people. There's no large group negotiation for cost of care. They're treating one person when one person goes to a doctor or goes to the hospital. So you blow away the networks and say, if you're a health insurance company, you're a health insurance company. And if you're a doctor or a hospital, you're that, but you can't be both.
We had something last year or the year before, maybe it was the year before, because if you weren't there, but there was an attempt to do something just like that. And it was a great discussion, but obviously it didn't gain muster, because those healthcare providers are huge and they have a lot of employees, and man, it's talk about a monopoly. It's a tough one.
Hugh Holmes from Mitchell. I'm the state commander of the South Dakota American Legion. I would appreciate your support on Senate Bill 118 and 93, which comes up next week, I believe, in committee on Wednesday the 31st. That's what's on the schedule. I could change on the Senate side.
What are the bills?
That deals with the East River State Veterans Cemetery.
What's the other one?
That's 93. 118 deals with.
They got one on each side?
No, 93 is Senate bill. They're both Senate bills. 118 deals with starting a fund for people to make donations to support the cemetery. Is a cemetery bill. The cemetery bill.
It's revised certain provisions regarding intentional exposure of others to certain.
91,
Okay.
sorry, 91. Sorry, 91. I can't do my math today.
Yeah, that
Yep.
looks better. That's a lot of names on that one.
Yep. Like all 3 of yours.
Senator Carson, would you like to comment on that?
Well, basically, a few years back, I carried that bill twice, the cemetery in eastern South Dakota, unable to get it, but this year, Larry Lickman is carrying it. Zickman, doing a very good job. We got it over on the Senate side, I think. I don't remember who's carrying it over there. But I believe we got just about every legislator signed up on it. So that means it'll go to the governor's office. And he is resisting it at this time. But I believe we found financing for it.
Good. I appreciate it.
I think that you will see something done. There'll be an argument, but you'll see it done.
On behalf of 19,000 plus veterans in the state that are Legion members, we appreciate what you do up there.
Thank you.
Do either of you have comments?
Well, it looks like every name in both the House and Senate is on here. So that means the governor, we can override him with that many names. But then just so you know, just because you might see our name on one of these bills, doesn't necessarily mean we'll support it in the end. Things change, and people, when we get there, that first couple weeks, it's a flurry of people, hey, sign my bill. And sometimes you don't have time to really look through it. But it doesn't mean we support it necessarily. It just means that we signed it to get them out of our face.
Any other bills? Or, I'm sorry, any other questions?
John Claggett, Davison County Commission. I know you all have passion for caregivers, and Davison County, we've for years and years have done some of our budgeting to help those agencies. I know there's a lot of discussion. Where are we at on that? And I know you had mentioned Medicaid and some potential savings. Where's the dollars coming from? Anything that's happening?
There's a lot happening, and I have to say pretty much everybody's on board with this. They recognize it. For the community support providers like LifeQuest, we need $5.87 million. The other area that we're looking at are the nursing homes and the rural care issues. There's a bill, and I have not seen it. I'm working with another legislator. She was going to email, it hasn't been dropped. She was going to email it to me, and I haven't gotten it. What we're saying, or how we worded it, and I'm hoping this is in the final bill, is that any extra money that's coming as a result of the federal policy because of IHS being covered by the feds, there's more money coming in, and I am told by one appropriator that that's going to amount to several $1 million. Well, we'll see. But our bill basically says before you expand any Medicaid programs, you will effectively cover those existing programs to include community support providers and nursing homes to the same level as state programs now and going forward, basically something like that. So we'll see what happens. I haven't, like I say, I haven't seen the final bill. We've had it there for like 2.5 weeks. We've sent it back and said no, and we can't put the dollar figure in there, but we want to make sure. And I'll give you an example. You probably already know this. Our community support, LifeQuest, any place, any of those that serve people are getting $11 an hour. They take a ton of training to be able to do that. At Yankton, those same people get $13.54 an hour, and 6 months later, they're up to over 14 by quite a bit. So we're doing the state's work. And I'm here to tell you, if they get the keys back, they aren't going to run it as well as we do, as little money as we do. And we know that from how those other agencies are run in the state because it's topic of conversation every year. And I doubt it's changed much since Lou has been there. I mean, it's been a battle. And this year I just said, look, we need to go to appropriations and say, this is a priority. And we need to fix it now so that we can move forward and keep them on task. So we'll see how the battle goes, but it's going to be a noisy one as far as I'm concerned.
Senator Klum?
I don't have a whole lot to add. She puts that pretty well in her comments.
Yeah.
So, were you going to talk about the court case or anything? Okay. You know, we've had the Supreme Court's agreed to hear the internet sales tax case, and so I was thinking yesterday in caucus we were talking about it, and what came to my mind is someone said, well, what's the windfall going to be if we get this through? How much is the state stand to gain? And then it was brought up, well, nothing. Because if that goes through, we'll slowly start decreasing the sales tax back down to 4%, because that's what was written into that sales tax increase. Once we hit it, what was the number? I think, yeah. It won't just all go away at once, but it'll slowly start decreasing it once we hit a certain number. But it's quite a ways. So it's a good thing for Main Street fairness, but it probably won't be the windfall that we all hope and pray for. So we'll have to keep looking for ways, like Tona mentioned about the IHS system, to help solve some of these problems.
Well, I'll just kind of bring you up to speed. We've got a lawsuit going that's going to be heard in front of the federal Supreme Court, and it's got to do with collection of sales tax on sales where the company does not have a brick and mortar presence in the state of South Dakota. Last February, we've heard rumors, we've heard estimates that Amazon alone, we're losing $60 million worth of sales tax to them, and one thing another. Last February, Amazon agreed to collect and remit sales tax to the state of South Dakota. Revenue cannot tell you how much any one person is putting in sales tax. So if you sit back, look at the numbers and one thing another, to begin with, it was about $8 million difference from 1 year to the next. So you have to say Amazon bought an $8 million, and I think it's worked its way up to, and one of the reasons it's worked its way up to $12 million, you're seeing other companies realize that they're probably going to lose this lawsuit and have to pay the tax. And right now, in February, the Supreme Court will hear our arguments. Then 30 days later, there'll be a brief filed in response to what we are filing. Then we'll come to the oral arguments. April, the state hopes that we will be getting close, and then in June, we hope that we have a decision by the state. If any of you if you're buying something and it's not a known company to you, say it's a bicycle and it's a company you've never heard of, but you buy it over the internet, and they ask you to pay the sales tax on it, ask them for their South Dakota sales tax license so that we know that that sales tax that is being collected is being remitted back to the state of South Dakota. We don't have a sales tax license yet, they don't pay the sales tax. But this is, back to the providers, 24/7 providers. Now that we have the water bill somewhat off the table, this is the top topic of conversation. With the HIS situation, since November, we're up about $675,000 to the good. So we're gonna see some, from what Tona suggested, we're gonna see some dollars start coming back in, and I do believe that those should be taken care of into the provider situation.
Okay, we have time for one more question, if anyone has one.
There's always something. Davidson County again. Following up on the caregivers, the other side of that is treatment centers. Our legal system problems and costs just keep skyrocketing. In terms of numbers and people occupying those, J.P. Skelly probably could tell you more than anybody who's doing what and how do we get that treatment center. I'm thinking two stepping stones. The Fed's taking part of that away. And you just say, where are we going to go with that? We've heard lots of lip service over the years that something's coming, but we just are not sure where that's at. So any visions, we'd be happy to hear.
Sitting in appropriations, I hear all the bill hearings and budget briefings prior to John, and I have not heard, nothing has come across as of yet, but we're just, understand we've only got 12 days into this system.
You would think without as many people going into the prison system, that there would be some savings that way that would come back to the counties that are now dealing with it. But my question to Lance was, is this coming out of the judiciary system? But very legitimate. When I saw that, it's like, how on earth can we deal? So, yeah.
And we talk meth. It's how do we even get our heads around this problem and begin to find a solution? We can throw money at stuff if we have it, but it's not attacking the problem. The root cause of what in the world are people doing that drives them to do meth or heck eat Tide Pods. It's just a weird disconnect in society that we have to somehow get ahead of, because as government, we can just throw money at problems. Money doesn't always solve problems, just treat symptoms.
Just do a quick follow-up. National Association of Counties has a step-up program that they've been working on, and that's a diversion program trying to keep mentally ill people out of our facilities. Goes back to your comment in terms of Yankton and some of their services. And when you look at those numbers, we don't help people when we shed them away. And so that's a big, big concern across the nation. And so if we could do something like that, one of the figures I heard before is 58% of the people in prisons have mental illness situations. So, wow, we're trading the back end of the horse wrong.
Okay, we are going to wrap it up. We will start with Senator Klum.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. Good conversation this morning. If you have any questions or stuff, please email us. Right now my inbox, just while we've been sitting here, has received about 13 emails all dealing with cosmetology and stuff going on with that. And so it's just
say yes, they're all good news.
Oh, they want yes on one and no on the other. So, but that's just send an email. When you do, make sure you identify you're from here, because not one of these emails is somebody that I represent. So it's good to make sure you identify yourself so I can hear back and I get back to you in a timely manner. Email is way better for me because I get that in committee. I get it on my phone. If you do a phone call, chances are it's going to be a while before I could get back to you sometimes. So please stay in touch with anything you hear, any concerns you have. So thanks for being here.
Senator Carson, please. I mean, Representative Carson, I'm sorry.
Thank you for coming. It's been very informative. I appreciate the dialogue. If you're trying to get a hold of me, the best thing to do is call me. My telephone number is published. Call the floor. It's a public number. When it comes to emails, I sometimes run quite a bit behind. And besides that, I'm probably the only guy out there that gets a bad computer every time we get computers. I got a hold of the good Senator Klum, and I road, we're going to be seeing more and more bills. We're going to see something that'll probably touch a nerve with one of you. Like I said, give me a call. The identify yourself. You know, the only thing I ask is, and I'll ask you right up front, who are you? And then I'll continue the conversation. But this has been nice. It's been a nice group of people, and you've been treated with a great deal of respect this morning, and I appreciate that.
Representative Rosem.
Thanks everybody for coming. And you know, I always say stay in touch because we're only as good as what you tell us. And I'll reiterate, if you say you're from District 20, that's really helpful. We get a ton of form letters, and some of those form letters are paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And so I always scroll all the way down to see if it's somebody from Mitchell. And if you do use a form letter, at least put a little note in at the beginning that says, you know, I know this is a form letter, but here's my experience. Just a little blurb, because those form letters, and what we're told is that some of them aren't even coming from legitimate addresses. So when I see Mitchell, I usually go in to make sure it's legitimate. But I don't even remember what the issue was this year where they were flying in and those are addresses made up. And you'll see it sometimes when I know a street doesn't exist, or 220 and a half, something or another. But do stay in touch, and email is great because that's easy to pick up on. You can call, and then we can get back in touch as well. I do want to say I got one bill and I think it's going to come up near the end of next week, and that is to go back to averaging enrollment in schools for 2 years. We have some situations in our district where there was a 28 student divergence from when they did their budget to when they actually got the money. That meant $53,000 was short, which they had to go to capital outlay with. So either that needs to happen, and I'm sure appropriations is not going to take kindly to it because it's a $3 million bill, and I'm sure the governor won't like it. But one thing that may happen is at least appropriations now will have the ability to look at each of those individual schools. Their hands were tied before, and they had to take just whatever the Committee on Education said. So I think there's something in the works to get that rectified. So somehow along the way, we have to get that rectified. It's not just rural schools. It impacted Rapid as well. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you again on March 2nd. 2 more days for bills. So that's kind of down to the wire.
March 2nd.
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative Carson, Representative Rosem, and Senator Klum for your time today. And thank you all for coming.